Welcome everyone to this presentation on the quantum nature of the blood. My name is Dr. Diane Blackburn and welcome to my office where my partner John and I practice live blood analysis. Looking at a drop of blood under the microscope is a very special event. We enter the world of the very small, the world of the red blood cell, who are a community of sentient beings involved in performing a vital role for our health. The blood carries the nutrition, the oxygen, the hormone, and every element that the cells of the body need to survive. So when we look at the blood, we enter in a very special entanglement with that blood, with the client, and this is what we will look at today. When I collect a drop of blood, I take it from the tip of a finger with a glucose meter and I place it between a slide and a slip cover in order to keep it alive. I also collect another sample that I will let to dry for the oxidation test. This is the perfect picture of the blood. This is how I would like, or the way that the perfect blood would look like. Every red blood cell, and those are red blood cells, are approximately all the same size. They are side by side and floating in the plasma of the blood. And this was, if this was a video instead of a picture, we would see the red blood cell shimmering. We also have white blood cell. This is another very important blood element. And the white blood cell patrol our blood and are involved in getting rid of intruder. They identify the intruder. This video is about Shelby's blood. Shelby came to visit us with her daughter. And while John was looking at her daughter's other parameter, I put Shelby's blood under the microscope. She did not have very many health concerns. So the blood was, the movie of her blood was running in the background, and Shelby and I were involved in talking about this and that. We were really in the moment, not even looking at her blood really. So you see a red blood cell moving in the blood, and we were discussing the benefit of Moxie and Chinese medicine when Shelby became suddenly very enthusiastic about the clue that she was discovering about how she could improve her health. And that was a very special moment because both Shelby and I were totally immersed in the moment. We were completely involved in the Shelby's thought process and the way that she was. And this is what happened. Her blood suddenly jerked and reorganized itself at the same time that Shelby became enthusiastic about how she can help to improve her health. And this was really a ha-ha moment for her. She got something. She realized something very important. She had that moment of creativity, that awareness that is so important, that you can only get when you are in the moment, in the present. My partner John and I, we witnessed from the very beginning of our work, we witnessed this event occurring in the blood of many clients. And we knew that it was happening, we could see it, but we really had no explanation of the reason why the blood will act in that way. And it is only when I took Dr. Paul Drouin's course at IQWIM, his blood hematology course, that I start to receive some very important keys. Actually, Paul Drouin witnessed this as well and realized that the blood mirrors the bio-vital, mental, supramental, spiritual environment of a client. In quantum medicine, we recognize the presence of other body of consciousness. We recognize the presence of an emotional, vital body, of a mental body, a supramental body of consciousness. And Dr. Paul Drouin said that some parameters that we find in the blood, some blood picture, give indirect measurements of what is going on at a more hidden level. So this was very important to be able to have this frame, to explore in depth the quantum nature of the blood. The blood has always been considered a very special, peculiar fluid. A third of the world's population is Christian. And when a believer partake of communion on Sunday at a Mass, the believer take a sip of the wine, which represents the blood of Christ. And if that person really believes this blood, that this wine is charged with the redemptive value of the pure divine blood of Christ, this is a very powerful event in his life. That realization has the power to have redemptive value, to correct defective thought pattern, what Christian calls sin, and the believer at that moment will be absolved from all sin and will enter a different space where everything is forgiven and everything is set for forgiveness of sin and healing of the body. So this is only one example of the special quality that the blood have. From the beginning of history, blood sacrifice were performed. Every civilization has practiced blood sacrifice. In order for our blood to finally record a moment of creativity, where the mind of a client connect at a supramental level, the blood will have taken two different pathways. There will have been two different pathways for this event to occur. One is a non-synaptic pathway, and this is the primary reality. We are here in the world of the thought, in the immaterial world of the mind. And this is the primary reality, and in quantum medicine, that will be the initial wave. The other pathway is the synaptic pathway, and this will be the physical reality, the reality of the hormones and the particule. We will start with the synaptic pathway by looking at the work of Candace Pert. In 1972, she discovered the opiate receptor, a molecule that is found on the surface of cells in the brain and in the body. Every cell has many receptors, not only for hormones, but for various other chemical receptor. But an hormone receptor will be a receptor that will, where that hormone configuration, that peptide will fit perfectly. And every peptide has a different configuration. They are made of amino acid, and they present in different configuration, and they will lock on the cell receptor just as a key will latch to a special, will go into a special receptor. Here you have two keys, two different shapes, and only the key A will fit in this receptor. Every neurotransmitter is composed of different amino acids that are arranged in a special configuration. And somebody had the idea of making a beautiful necklace with the endorphin peptide. And endorphins are the mechanism for bliss and bonding. And Candice Pert she believed that there is one kind of peptide for every emotion. And we will look at what is an emotion a little bit more in depth during this presentation. This is our neurotransmitter travel from neuron to neuron through the synaptic cleft. And as our feelings change, this mixture of peptides travel through your body and your brain, and they're literally changing the chemistry of every cell of the body. And we see here a beautiful picture of two neurons, and these neurotransmitters here traveling through that little space between the neuron called the synaptic cleft. These emotions are memories, and they are stored in the body. We have identified approximately 200 hormones, and Candice Pert talk about 200 memories that are stored in the body. They are stored in special receptor called ganglia. A feeling or a thought will translate in a peptide, and this peptide will be released at the site of a ganglion somewhere in the body. On this picture, we see the chakra system of the emotional, vital body. Alongside, and we know that the chakra correlate to various glands. We have some chakra that will correlate to the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the thymus gland, and so forth. And in the nervous system, these gland chakra will also be very, very close to various ganglion plexus that we have alongside of the spine. And this is where the memory of a traumatic event will be stored in the body at the site of these various ganglion plexus there. I suspect that, for example, in the case of shingles, it might be the result of an overwhelming memory, an overwhelming emotion that the client hasn't been able to deal with, and that will be stored as pain in other ganglion, other nerve plexus there, because a shingle is very painful, and I have a feeling that is correlate to more than a little memory, but relate to something very traumatic that a client might have gone through that will be activate the site of pain. Excuse me. Every molecule of emotion, every one of these peptides is a program event, an attitude potentially affecting every aspect of the body. The hormones circulate in the plasma of the blood. Blood plasma is that pale yellow liquid that we see here. It's a component of the blood that holds the blood cell in suspension, and it is also the extracellular matrix of blood cell. We will talk a lot about plasma. This whole presentation really is about the special nature of the plasma. And in the blood, the plasma has this function of being the extracellular matrix of the blood cell and hold the blood in suspension and carry every blood element, every white blood cell, red blood cell, hormones, and it will also hold other blood element that we see in the blood when we do live blood cell analysis. When we look at peripheral blood, we will also see uric acid crystal, we will see cholesterol crystal, blood clot, platelet aggregation, fibrin, inflammatory process. So the plasma is the matrix, the fluid that will carry all of that through the arteries and the capillaries. We will see how hormones have a powerful influence in shaping the blood picture that we see under the microscope. So these hormones have also a special ability to change the membrane of a red blood cell. We see here some teardrop red blood cell, teardrop shaped red blood cell. And this is what John and I saw in the blood of the very first client who had a moment of creativity, who demonstrated a ha-ha moment in her blood. She came to visit us, and Linda was the caretaker for her husband who was very, very sick, and that was heavy on her spirit. She was very sad about the whole situation, and her blood was showing teardrop shape. When we saw that, we asked her if the way she was feeling, her emotion, the way she was feeling inside, that sadness, that deep sadness, could be responsible for the shape of her teardrop blood cell. And as soon as we mentioned that, the light came in her face, and she realized the connection between the way she was feeling, that deep emotional state, and the way that her blood was, the red blood cell present themselves. And that was the first time that we witnessed a moment of reorganization there in the blood, where her blood suddenly moved, reorganized itself, and her red blood cell became round again. Sometimes the red blood cell will be schistocyte. They will have a deformed membrane. And this also will be the result of some various hormone circulating in the blood. And we will talk about this particular type of picture of a red blood cell. So the question that we could ask is, could hormones have a role to play in transmitting in the plasma of the blood a transformative wave and collapsing into picture the various blood elements visible under the microscope? Could they affect our red blood cell? Dr. Paul Drouin has observed that the plastic nature of the blood and the extreme sensibility of the plasma could certainly contribute the perfect medium for the play of consciousness in our most sacred tissue. In 2013, L.E. Panin has published a scientific paper for a university in Russia. And he says in this paper that under the action of adrenaline and cortisol, erythrocytes, which are red blood cells, and the hemoglobin that they carry undergo different structural transformation. So what he is demonstrating in this paper is that red blood cell, the membrane of a red blood cell, will adopt different shape, different structure when adrenaline and cortisol circulate in large number in the blood. And adrenaline and cortisol are two very important hormones that circulate in the blood under extreme stress. When we talking about the power of adrenaline and cortisol to change the structure of a red blood cell, we're not talking about only an event where a little stressor affect our mind. We're talking about the presence of a deep-seated stressor that will translate of adrenaline or cortisol, these two stress hormones, being present in the blood for a long time. This is a picture that we often see in the blood of a client. You notice that the red blood cells are bottle cap shaped. They look corrugated. The cell membrane is obviously damaged in this picture. And Bruce Lipton has a lot to say about what is the membrane of a cell. He said, it was the first time that I heard this, that I read this, when I read in his book, The Biology of Belief. He said that the membrane, the brain of a cell is its membrane. And it makes a lot of sense. If we just say the word membrane, we say it all, main brain. The main brain, the brain of a cell is the membrane. I go a little bit further and I say that the memory brain of a cell is the membrane. Long-term memories of traumatic or abusive situation in childhood might be stored in the body. We're talking here of a pattern of abuse. We're not talking about a little frustrating event that happened in our life in the past, a spanking that our parents give us, or a little harsh word that was said, to us. We're talking about a real traumatic, abusive situation there, where that pattern was repeated over and over, and had the power to had an impact on the mind. And these memories now are stored in the subconscious of the person, at the subconscious, deep subconscious level of the mind. And these memories, every time that the client revisit these memories, it has a deep impact in awakening the pain sensor, the plexus of the ganglia, and it will result in damaged cell membrane, will be the picture of the destructive effect of unresolved traumatic memories. The client sometimes unknowingly holds to the energy of these memories. It is there in the client that made such a deep effect that there is an agreement with these memories. This is what the client knows. And we know of people who will go from an abusive father to an abusive husband, only to divorce this abusive husband or boyfriend and remarry another abusive husband. The person is unable to resolve that traumatic event, is unable to bring it to the conscious mind. It is in the subconscious level, but the person is unable to bring it up to the surface. And we will witness this shape of red blood cell. The old view of the shape of a red blood cell was that the red blood cell were born with a certain shape and nothing would change. They would not be affected by any stimulus. They would not respond to the environment. The proteins and all the signaling pathways on the surface of a red blood cell were just there as a vestige of the cell making in the embryo. This was the old view. We know now, and again, thanks to the very, very groundbreaking work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, we know that cells are highly responsive to their environment. The red blood cells are demonstrating this fact when we look at them under the microscope, on the objective of a dark field microscope. And this is probably one of the most important gifts that that the living blood, that the dark field microscopy give us. We are able to view the quality of the blood, the living blood, the life of that blood. We are not looking at dead blood, and this is what the technician will look at when he analyze the arterial blood, and the technician will dye this blood, shake that blood will already be dead. So the technician really does autopsy of the blood. He is totally, there's no life anymore in that blood. And through live blood analysis, we see the blood moving. We see the quality of the blood. And this is probably one of the most valuable gifts that we have with live blood analysis. We will review very quickly the composition of a cell. So a cell is made of thin polar membranes. It's a thin polar membrane made of 2 layers of lipid molecule. They form a continuous barrier around all cells. This barrier keeps ions, proteins, and other molecules where they are needed. Additionally, the cell has a protein skeleton that form an extensive web around the bilayers and is joined to it at what are called junction complexes. The basic unit is an hexagonal lattice with 6 pectrin molecules. So the skeleton looks a little bit like this. A beautiful lattice with, and the cell membrane as well is like a drum, the membrane of a drum. It's very supple and very flexible, and this is what will allow the cell to squeeze when it goes through the tiny little capillaries. It is also, we could say that it is also a crystal, because a crystal is a structure whose molecules are arranged in a regular, repeated pattern. To me, this picture of a cell, a red blood cell as a crystal, is very evocative. I see in that image that a red blood cell should be round, should have a vibrating membrane, a shimmering membrane, and should be like a crystal. It should be encoded with its perfect coding. And when we are, if we could experience a perfect state of health, this is how the red blood cell would look like. We never see that anymore. We never see perfect blood. 90% of our clients have rouleau in the blood. The plasma will carry different blood element. We never see a perfect blood. But this is the ideal, and with quantum medicine, we dare to think that if we were able to connect at the deepest level of the supramental layer of our mind, if we could connect to consciousness, we could experience in the twinkling of an eye, in a moment of creativity, in a quantum leap, there is that potential to recreate that perfect coding in our blood. As I was saying, approximately 80% of all our clients present their blood like this rouleau. It is a sign of worry, of thinking, of being in a beta brainwave, of experiencing an extreme or prolonged attachment to a thought or a problem. And when the blood is present in rouleau, it is also a sign of poor digestion. We know that when we are involved in excessive thinking, the brain requires excessive amount of blood. So there is an excessive blood flow to the brain. The blood delivers large amount to fuel the brain. And this will result in poor circulation to the extremity and also poor digestion, because the blood, the oxygen that will be involved in the digestive process is not available. When that worrying or this thinking, and we're talking here about people who are worrying, people who don't sit to eat their meal, who will read as they eat, who would watch CNN as they having their meal, or check their cell phone or on the computer, who are not present in the action of eating, who are still in their mind processing information, requiring large amount of blood in the brain. But when worry becomes stress, when it turns into fear and sustains stress over a long period of time, the blood that we see under the microscope, these red blood cells will become even more tightly packed, and there will be less and less oxygen that will be carried in these red blood cells, and this will choke a portion of the normal blood supply to various organs, glands, and the heart. Worry really means choking. It's an Anglo-Saxon word that means choking. And we know that stress is an important factor in cardiovascular disease. The heart has been reclassified as an endocrine gland. It is directly affected, it directly affects the amygdala, and this is the most important emotional processing center of the brain. So it connects through the amygdala to the brain directly. It also secretes a very special hormone called ANP to slow the heartbeat. So if we experience stress, if we are in a state of fear, the heart will have a tendency to beat faster, and this is when that hormone ANP will be secreted and received in the site in the heart, on a receptor on the heart. The gland that produces ANP is the pituitary gland, the pineal gland. And this is an endorphin hormone, an endorphin neurotransmitter. It's oxytocin. It's actually oxytocin that is received at the site of the heart to slow down the heartbeat. Which is a proof, again, that the heart and not just the brain can experience bliss. Oxytocin is the love hormone. We feel love at the heart, here in the center of the chest where the heart is situated. We don't need any scientists to tell us that oxytocin will be accepted through receptor at the heart center. Taoist doctor and Marguerite de Serigny, who is very important in the work for Dr. Paul Drouin. In all of his classes, Dr. Paul Drouin talks about Marguerite de Serigny, who was a quantum doctor, who was a Taoist doctor, but of another order, a more spiritual order, if you want. And she says that the heart is the emperor. It's the absolute master. The core heart, that heart center, which includes more than the heart, but the heart as the emperor, is the treasurer of the Chen. The Chen is the divine spark. It is what animates the soul. So the core heart, and the core heart is also found in the the head center. It is the energy generation. It includes, of course, the heart center, the middle of the brain, the thalamic center, and the spirit, the supramental layer of information. We will talk about now the non-synaptic pathway. And this is something that my partner John Blackburn is exploring along with myself, because we are working together with that aspect of that new pathway. And John is doing research for his thesis, his PhD thesis at the moment. And we actually have performed experiment, very important experiment, with somebody that you are all familiar with, but because the result is not all compiled yet, we cannot mention it in this presentation. Although the preliminary results are very compelling and very exciting. John and his colleague conclude that the cerebrospinal fluid, the CSF, is the medium that registers the movement of subtle rarefied energy in the brain. Because when we talk about the non-synaptic pathway, we are talking about this subtle rarefied energy, the way that it will circulate and be imprinted in the cerebrospinal fluid. The cerebrospinal fluid, the CSF, is a filtration of the blood. So the CSF is produced in the ventricles, in the middle of the brain. This is where actually the CSF will circulate, but it is really produced in the choroid plexus. The choroid plexus is that red area here. The choroid plexus becomes apparent in an embryo around the 7 weeks of gestation. This is when the cerebrospinal fluid will start to circulate in the embryonic brain of the embryo. This is also where the pineal gland will become visible and release its first DMT, its first release of DMT, which is a spirit molecule. This is also where the pupil will be formed, will appear in the eye of the embryo and will become neurally connected with the pineal gland. And this is really important in my I have another part of this presentation called quantum embryology, and Marguerite de Serigny, Rudolf Steiner, some iridologists believe that it is through the fontanelle of the head and going through the pineal gland and the pupil that the interior energy and that chain that we have seen, the divine spark, will be given to the embryo. This is its initial pathway. And at 7 weeks of gestation, this is when an embryo becomes a living soul, will be able to experience everything that we experience. The embryo at that time is not only a vehicle, it becomes a living soul. So the choroid plexus is made of little villi like this. And its job is to filtrate. This is the capillary, the blood circulating in a capillary, and the choroid plexus filtrates through these little cubical cells here, which really are the brain-blood barrier, filtrates the blood and receives, filtrates only the plasma of the blood and will deliver here, that will be delivered to the ventricle. And this is how the blood will, the plasma, the cerebrospinal fluid, the plasma of the cerebrospinal fluid will start circulating. We have a little video here on the circulation of the cerebrospinal fluid, and I just want to show you that it originates here in the ventricule, and it actually bathes the three very vital hormones, gland that we have at the center of the brain, which are the hypothalamus, the pineal, and the pituitary gland, and we will come back to this. So the cerebrospinal fluid, which is made out of plasma and other elements, salt and all kind of other elements that are particular to the cerebrospinal fluid. This is where it starts its circulation, and it goes down along the spinal column as well. Sorry. So we have seen that the CSF is a filtration of the blood. It is the blood plasma that will make, that is really the cerebrospinal fluid. And the plasma of the blood is a charged fluid that carries all the nutrition and oxygen of the trillion of cells of the body. It is also a mirror reflecting the conscious creative energy input of the mind as it imprints the blood element with its energy signature. So that plasma is really the vehicle to be imprinted with the initial thought, the initial emotion that will eventually be reabsorbed. The cerebrospinal fluid is at one time reabsorbed in the blood, and when it is reabsorbed, it is a charged fluid. The plasma has always been intuited from the very beginning of religious thinking. The plasma was known. The Vedic doctor called it the akasha. And akasha is a Sanskrit word that means a primary substance. It's the imperishable record of life. They also call it the ether, which is the fifth state of matter. And the Christian and the Jewish, the Kabbalah, call it the book of remembrance. So it is not only in their view, and when you study, when you look at the meaning and the way that they interpret other words for plasma, such as akasha, or the ether, of the book of remembrance, of the book of life, you realize that they are all saying the same thing, that consciousness is everything. It is everywhere. It is the fabric of life. From consciousness, everything is made and everything circulates in consciousness. In the Quantum Healer course of Dr. Paul Drouin, he says that consciousness, another word for plasma, is the foundation, the fabric of the universe. It is pure abstract being, a notion of pure potentiality, pure intelligence, self-aware consciousness, pure potentiality, wave of infinite possibility. So these are all other ways that we can, by which we can describe consciousness. Amit Goswami says that consciousness is the ground of all being. So not only it is the fabric of everything, it is also from consciousness that everything is born. And this is what we find in the plasma when a thought imprint the cerebrospinal fluid. That cerebrospinal fluid, that wave is imprint of the plasma of the cerebral fluid, and it is a non-material event. A thought has no matter. You know, we cannot see, we cannot touch a thought, but it has an energy that will be imprinted in the plasma of the cerebrospinal fluid. Plasma is also, we talk about the cosmic plasma. And it is Irving Langmuir who coined the term plasma to describe the terrain of the cosmos. Again, we see that it is involved in the terrain. The terrain of the cosmos after blood plasma because of its almost lifelike and self-organizing properties. The visible universe is 99.999% of plasma. Every beautiful galaxies and nebula stars are created from this original medium. We could say in the beginning was the plasma. In the beginning was consciousness. In the beginning was the akasha. In the beginning was the ether. All different words to describe the plasma. Nassim Haramein studied the plasma. Scientists would say, cosmologists will say that the plasma is empty. It's a vacuum. There's nothing there in the plasma. But Nassim Haramein has studied it and has come with incredible discovery on the quantum nature of the cosmic plasma. I encourage you to look at his videos. Many are on the website of the University of Qwest. As above, so below is an esoteric saying, and just as the original creative intelligent energy moving through the plasma, because we know that the plasma is the fabric and is the energy, just as it is moving to the plasma of the cosmos, and has the power to create beautiful celestial body, our own conscious, intentional, creative energy can create a beautiful human organism, can create a beautiful blood picture. The observation of the living blood offers a window to this inner cosmos. So the plasma is everything. The plasma is the fabric of everything, the fabric of the cosmos. It is the plasma, that fluid, that tissue that is involved in imprinting the cerebrospinal fluid from our intention, and that we will eventually see in the blood as a mirror. We already talked about the three important, very special, very spiritual glands that are situated in the middle of the brain. And they are the pituitary gland, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, and the pineal gland. They are situated right in the middle of the brain, and they secrete some very powerful neurotransmitters such as DMT, oxytocin, endorphin, melatonin, and serotonin involved in the circadian cycle. And the Taoist doctor, who really were quantum doctor, they say that between the pineal and the pituitary gland, they call this the crystal palace, because this was the origin of light in the brain. They saw it as flashes of light in the middle of the brain. And what were they really talking about was the flow of cerebrospinal fluid in the ventricle there. This is what they were seeing and talking about, and they called that the crystal palace. The Greek had a mythology about the three goddesses, the three graces, who were the assistant of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. The goddess of love, and they were the assistant. These three goddesses were the assistant of Aphrodite. So their name is Aglaé, where we get the word glee. Euphrosyne, where we get the word euphoria, and the last gland is thalamus. The word thalamus also means the bridal chamber. So we see right away that there's an evocation in their name here. It really evokes bliss and happiness, and emotions that are produced from these special glands that circulate in the middle of the brain. And I can only picture Aphrodite in her beautiful bridal chamber with these three beautiful goddesses assisting her, preparing elixir and ambrosia and nectar, which will represent the secretion from those three glands. This is actually a 3D video of the action, the nervous action in the brain, the nerve firing in the brain. It is from a website called The Glass Brain, and this is new. This was discovered and put together in 2014. And I will run the little video, and it is an amazing video, and it really encompasses and visually show everything that we have been talking in this presentation. And you will see the brain firing. You will see that it originates from the middle of the brain, from the ventricle, from probably the secretion that the cerebrospinal is imprinted from these three special glands. And now the brain, the neuron, will receive that light from the crystal palace. Let's have a look. You see all that firing there of the neuron. And on this video, you can plainly see the ventricles. It is that orange, it's orange color here. And John really said that this is where the fire originates. Our fire and our enthusiasm, everything originates from that. And it originates from the ventricle, from the circulation of the cerebrospinal fluid, which will carry through the spine and which will eventually enter the bloodstream. So this is a 3D picture of the brain of the creator of that 3D video, Yvette. That is her brain under meditation. It is our brain firing. It is our brain carrying neurotransmitter from neuron to neuron, and sometimes you see that the whole brain is illuminated. And every time that we see a burst of fire, burst of life like this, I suspect that the blood records the very same movement in energy, a movement of energy. That same creative wave will be seen in the blood. And if we were able to just hold on to that moment where we are in the present, when we are in no time, no space, when we are in the moment, that present, because healing cannot occur in the past. Healing occurs in the present. Sorry, we're having a windstorm, and you can hear in the back the door and the wind. I hope it was not too distracting. But what I'm saying is that at the moment where that energy is released, the mind of the person is in the supramental level, is in the world of archetype, is choosing as that person has a potential to choose from all possibility, perfect health, perfect healing of the emotional body. This is when forgiveness will happen. Forgiveness that has the power to cleanse everything. Well, there will not be any attachment to wrong meaning. We will be able to enjoy life, and the blood will be able to carry all these perfect hormones of oxytocin, the hormone of life, of DMT, the spiritual hormone, and every cell, every receptor, that is every cell of our body, who as receptor will be able to accept that healing, that joy, and that love. This is very profound, and I think that the knowledge of that, to be able to picture it, is very powerful. to go back to that to the cerebrospinal fluid, Emanuel Swedenborg, who is a philosopher, he was an engineer, a researcher, a real quantum searcher, who was looking for answer, not just in matter, but was really trying to connect to the whole picture, conduct what do you call it, autopsy, and notice that in the brain, in this higher mental processing brain, it was surrounded by the fine blood-like fluid that was found in the spirituous fluid of the brain. He said he called it the spiritus fluid, the spiritual fluid of the brain, that functioned as a vehicle for the divine inflow that has been streaming through man and his world ever since matter came into being. So he really says what the Kabbalist says, that in order for matter to be formed, you needed to have the wave. You needed to have a special fabric for creation, for the creation of all matter. The non-synaptic event that I talk about, that word, I was inspired to use it when John accessed this website from Dr. Moro Zapatera, who also consider the cerebrospinal fluid as a special fluid, as a very spiritual fluid. And he is the one to say that the CSF is a non-synaptic, synchronized, and will transmit a simultaneous emission of energy. And this is the first wave, the primary reality, when the plasma will be imprinted with higher thought and will be carrying healing hormones. And when this will happen, so the conclusion, we could say that a quantum leap, a quantum spark, this is how John calls it, a quantum spark in the brain, where you see that brain firing, that moment of creativity, or that aha moment. The initial impulse from the supramental layer of consciousness, the wave, is of a rarefied energy without substance, imprinted in the CSF, which is a non-synaptic event. As it cascades in a downward causation, the more substantial, denser neuropeptides, the product of emotion and lower mental activity, are carried in the blood plasma through nerve synapse. This is the particle. And all this happens in a quantum instant, or a quantum leap witnessed in the blood. The quantum doctor and the Tibetan knew that when energy circulates, the blood also circulates. They knew that the quality of the blood is a reflection of the quality of the soul, because consciousness creates the blood and uses it as its vehicle. So this concludes this presentation. I hope that you were inspired by it, and I hope that we will be able to meet again and explore other aspects of the blood, maybe talk about quantum embryology or the blood code. Thank you very much.